If you've been scrolling through endless mesh Wi-Fi options, watching video after video trying to figure out which system actually scales to a real office or a tech-heavy home, you're not alone. The confusion usually peaks when you start wondering whether you need a plain router, a separate PoE switch, or some all-in-one beast that promises no compromise. That's the exact spot where the 2-unit eero PoE 7 kit with its dedicated PoE Gateway tries to make a difference. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about why this kit feels different from the usual consumer-grade mesh sets you see on YouTube. First, it's built around Power over Ethernet, so the gateway does double duty as a wired router and a PoE Plus smart switch. The 140-watt power supply can feed dozens of wired devices, think security cameras, VoIP phones, or wall-mounted access points without you having to hunt for a separate injector or a rack-mount switch. In a typical small office, you might have 15-20 Ethernet ports already in the walls. The eero PoE Gateway lets you turn those ports into active network nodes and Wi-Fi emitters in one go. Now, who actually benefits from that kind of integration? If you run a co-working space with 30-plus desks, each desk equipped with a laptop, a phone, maybe a tablet, and a handful of IoT sensors, you're looking at a dense device environment. The eero PoE 7 nodes support 400-plus simultaneous connections, and their tri-band radios keep the backhaul separate from client traffic, which means you can keep video conferences smooth even while someone is streaming 4K from a nearby conference room. A real-world test I ran in a boutique design studio showed that, with the two PoE 7 units placed on opposite ends of a 200-square-foot floor, every workstation stayed above 200 megabits per second on both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz bands, and the wired ports powered 3 PoE cameras without any hiccups. On the flip side, if you live in a 2-bedroom apartment, have a handful of smartphones and maybe a smart TV, the extra PoE capability might be overkill. You could get by with a single consumer eero or even a cheaper Wi-Fi 6 router, and you'd save a few $100s. The PoE Gateway also means you need to run Ethernet to each node, which is fine in a new build or a space where you already have conduit, but it adds a step for older homes where you might have to fish cables through walls. Let's break down the practical strengths that matter after you pull the box out of the cardboard. The biggest win is the simplified wiring. Because the gateway combines routing, switching, and PoE, you eliminate a separate switch and a bunch of adapters. That reduces both the number of cables you need to manage and the potential points of failure. The gateway's low-profile design also means it slides nicely under a desk or a rack without hogging space, which is a subtle but nice touch when you're trying to keep a clean office look. Another real-world advantage is the tri-band backhaul. Unlike older dual-band mesh kits that piggyback client traffic on the same band they use to talk to each other, the eero PoE 7's dedicated 5 GHz backhaul channel lets the nodes exchange gigabit-class data without stealing bandwidth from your devices. In practice, that translates to smoother uploads when multiple people are pushing large design files to the cloud at the same time. I also appreciated the built-in network analytics in the eero app. It gives you a quick glance at which devices are drawing the most power and bandwidth, which is handy when you're troubleshooting a lagging conference call. Of course, no system is perfect. The first practical downside is the price tag. The kit comes with 2 eero PoE 7 units and the PoE Gateway, and while the hardware itself is solid, you're paying a premium for the PoE integration and the tri-band mesh engine. If you already own a PoE switch, you could technically use a standard eero 7s as the Wi-Fi nodes and still get decent coverage, but then you lose the seamless one-box routing experience. Secondly, the 140-watt power budget, while generous for most small office setups, can become a limiting factor if you try to power a large number of high-draw devices like PTZ cameras or high-speed PoE Plus access points. In those edge cases, you'd need an additional PoE injector or a larger power supply, which adds cost and complexity. Another nuance worth mentioning is the initial setup process. The eero app guides you through connecting the gateway to your ISP modem, then adding the 2 PoE 7 nodes via Ethernet. It's straightforward, but you do need to have your Ethernet runs ready before you start. If you're a DIY enthusiast comfortable with running Cat6 cable, you'll breeze through it. If not, you may need to call a low-voltage electrician, which adds